With me in the studio this hour, Brigadier General in the Reserves, Israel Relik Shafir, is the former commander of the Tel Nof Air Force Base and a former combat pilot in the Israeli Air Force. Good to see you, Relik. Thank you very much for being with us. So we've got the ongoing fighting in Gaza. At the same time, Egyptian reports of an Israeli delegation in Cairo to discuss some kind of way of getting the hostages home. 136 people still being held in Gaza. One of the proposals, according to Israeli media, a Qatari proposal which would see Hamas leaders exiled in exchange for their release. We've heard about this possibility before, but what are your thoughts at this stage?
Well, it'll probably take place once the leaders of Hamas feel that they've reached the end of the game, in that they cannot move, they cannot control anything above the ground, and their time is more or less up, in the sense that they feel that the Israelis are going to come knocking at the door. So they will opt to use the hostage card for a safe haven, so to speak, coming out of the tunnels. It doesn't look like it's there yet. And Israel is a lot more pressured to reach an agreement because the sand clock is, for some of the hostages, is nearing its end. And Israel is under pressure, both from the public in Israel, the general mood of the Israeli public, and a genuine care for the hostages. Whereas Hamas, the question is how much pressure is Hamas under. So we don't have an equilibrium at this time yet to reach an understanding, but Qatar has proven itself to be a biased, I would say, negotiator. So Israel is turning to Egypt, and also the Israeli government needs to show initiatives. It needs to show that it's moving. It's under public pressure. So it's unclear whether this can really lead to some solution.
And the other pressure on Israel, of course, is from its greatest ally, the United States. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was here yesterday. He's been in Ramallah today. It's clear, isn't it, the Biden administration, don't want this to be a big feature of their re-election campaign, and they are putting the pressure on. But at the same time, we did hear from the White House this afternoon, they don't want a ceasefire at this stage. That's the message out of the White House. How do you interpret these messages coming from the US?
There is an interest in the West generally by all leaders not to cave into terrorists, as a general understanding that this clash of civilization of supposedly West versus East must end with a win to the West. But that entails the continuation of a war, but nobody wants to see civilians getting killed or in harm's way because the terrorists are using them. So it's an almost impossible equation to reach a solution in that manner. So Israel will probably go into a lower intensity chase of Hamas, perhaps with even more casualties, in order to extend the time frame that it gets from the West.
All right, Relik Shafir for now. Thank you very much. Well, still with me in the studio, Brigadier General Israel Relik Shafir. And just coming off the back of what Dr. Al-Amari says, Israel needs to tread a careful line here, doesn't it? Because Egypt and Jordan are allies. And when you have some of the far-right lawmakers making comments about Gaza, resettling Gaza with Jewish settlements, etc., that could cause some problems, couldn't it?
Not only could it cause problems, but this is a threat to Israeli security and well-being, in that these extreme right, I would say, politicians are actually using Gaza in order to safeguard the West Bank settlements. I don't think they really mean to go back to Gaza so much as to say that the settlements in the West Bank are preventing a possible October 7th massacre as it took place there. So they're actually bolstering their position, and some of their cohorts are taking this a little bit too seriously. But the prime minister is also entangled in a problem that he needs the right-wing extremists in order to remain in power, but he cannot condone what they're saying. And so he's between the rock and the hard place on this one, and he may have to make a decision that may topple his government.
All right, and on the issue of the West Bank, the government has been discussing the return of Palestinian workers who live in the West Bank to come back to jobs in construction and agriculture, industries which are suffering or essentially on hold in some cases since the war broke out. I mean, in terms of security, would that be a good idea to bring back Palestinian workers?
In terms of security, the best thing is not to let anyone and separate everybody from everybody. There's no end to the ideology of security, or I would say even using security as an excuse to further your political gains. So as an example, the right-wing extremists, political leaders, are against letting Palestinians work in Israel.
Well,
but they are.
Most Israelis are also against it.
But they are allowing, or they are for Palestinians working in the settlements in the West Bank, because that's their home territory, and who will build those houses and who will take care of what goes on in there. So it's a kind of a game that's out there in the open. I think most Israelis are afraid that Palestinians coming from the West Bank, they're afraid and they're scared of things that might take place. But think of another intifada where the people who are used to work, probably close to 100,000 Palestinians per day working in Israel, are now jobless. And what will it translate to in the West Bank if those people go hungry? So Israel there is in quite a bind, not only with the Palestinians, with its own internal security and political situation.
Okay, Relik Shafir, for now. Thank you very much. And with me in the studio, Brigadier General Israel Relik Shafir, of former combat pilots in the Air Force. Thank you for staying on with us. And in terms of degrading Hezbollah's capabilities, as a former Air Force pilot, we see these strikes day after day. Is Israel making good progress there? Is it making a difference?
Certainly so. The Israeli Air Force is concentrating on the area south of the Litani border and taking out Hezbollah posts, munition depots, communications, and so on, pushing the Hezbollah further to the north. I think Hezbollah did not expect this to take place, and targeting the commanders in that area and also in the Golan Heights. So Israel is actually relaying that it wants a war with Lebanon, and it wants to resolve this because of the 80,000 people who can't go back to their homes. So Israel is looking for a conflict in a kind of hold me, and are telling the negotiators, the US and France, that we're ready for war. And Hezbollah is actually on the defensive on that one. So a resolution such as imply the 1701 with international forces securing that decision, and maybe Israel will have to relent or give in on several areas in the Shaba area.
You're talking about the 13 points of dispute between
some of
Israel and Lebanon.
the dispute areas, so that Hezbollah or Lebanon or whatever you want to describe it will have something to show that they've gained, even though they've gone back and actually.
Would that deter Hezbollah, do you think, to capitulate to some of their demands?
Maybe. Because Iran is in the back, and in fact, it really depends on the leverage that the Europeans and Americans place on Iran and on the Houthis. So there are some plays that can be made in the area.
Okay, Relik Shafir, thank you for now. Do you think the US has kind of got Israel's back here when it comes to the Houthis? They've created this coalition. It doesn't seem to be deterring the Houthis very much at this stage, but at least it's not just Israel having to deal with yet another threat.
Yes, and honestly, Israel cannot deal with that threat. It's the area where they shoot from is further than Tehran from Israel. So it's a pretty long distance, and it's difficult to maintain air superiority and intelligence there. So I think we have to remember 1990, when the U.S. started the coalition in the war against Saddam Hussein. It took a half a year to amass the forces and get ready for the strike eventually in January 91. And I think this is what is happening here. They want to have a coalition. They want to go through the motions in the United Nations and show that they've depleted all the diplomatic or statesmanship capabilities, and only then strike. This is something that the Americans have been doing for quite a while, over 100 years. Speak softly and carry a big stick, and in the end of the day, they use the big stick, and I think it's pretty well coming.
All right, we're yet to see that big stick, though. All right, thank you very much, Relik Shafir.